Rebecca Taylor was the owner of the city's most prestigious hotel, but one day she stumbled upon a video online. In the video, receptionists were seen humiliating and turning away a guest. The words were cold, sharp, and ruthless. "This place isn't for people like you." Rebecca had built this hotel with her own hands, but the moment she stepped into the lobby, everything changed. Condescending looks, mocking smiles. When she went down to the restaurant, she felt lost among the empty tables. Yet she couldn't escape hearing those words. "There's no room here, but you might find a restaurant that suits you." But Rebecca didn't give up. She spoke with the staff, dug deep into the root of the problem, and finally she came face to face with the truth. Anderson. He defended his power with vile words. "This hotel is for whites. The others only work here. They can never lead." Rebecca's response was clear. "This is my hotel, and I'm the one who will change this system." So what did Rebecca do? Her unexpected move wouldn't just transform the hotel, but shift the balance entirely. But how did she pull it off? Let's dive in. Rebecca Taylor was sipping her morning coffee when a notification on her phone caught her eye. "Racism scandal at Crescent Bay Hotel." The headline was spreading rapidly on social media. Rebecca's chest tightened as she clicked on the video. The footage was shot in her hotel's pristine lobby. A woman, black, modestly dressed, stood at the reception desk, clearly hoping to book a room. But the young receptionist, with a condescending expression, said coldly, "This isn't the right place for people like you." The woman in the video, calm but visibly hurt, asked, "Is this your policy? Do you decide based on the color of my skin?" The receptionist, smirking, replied, "I'm just trying to uphold our standards," ending the conversation abruptly. Rebecca felt sick to her stomach. She scrolled through the outraged comments flooding the video. "This is appalling. Is spending money while black now a problem? What will Rebecca Taylor do about this? Does the hotel's owner even know?" These comments struck Rebecca to her core. Crescent Bay Hotel was her dream. She had spent years building a place rooted in luxury, kindness, and equality. But now her hotel had become a symbol of disgrace, and the thought paralyzed her. She replayed the video over and over. The receptionist's contemptuous tone and the woman's quiet resilience burned into her mind. Tears welled up as she took a deep breath. "This is my creation," she thought. "I can't let people use it this way." Setting her phone aside, Rebecca tried to calm herself, but the peace didn't last long. Her assistant, Emma, rushed into the room. "Rebecca, have you seen the video? It's all anyone's talking about," she said, her voice tinged with worry. Rebecca nodded. "Yes, I've seen it. This is unbelievable. This happened in my hotel." "How did I not notice, Emma?" Emma shrugged lightly. "Employees might not have reported complaints directly to you. These things tend to fly under the radar, but what do you plan to do?" Rebecca stood up, her voice shaky but resolute. "I need to fix this from the ground up. I'll go undercover as a regular guest to see what's really happening in my hotel. It's the only way to understand how the staff truly behaves." Emma raised her eyebrows. "Rebecca, that's risky. You could get recognized, and trying to solve something this big on your own might be exhausting." Rebecca understood Emma's concern, but wasn't backing down. "If these people are tarnishing my dream, I need to see it and address it myself. This isn't just about a video. It's about the future of this hotel and the values I stand for." Rebecca packed a simple bag. She set aside her elegant suits, opting for an old pair of jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and sneakers. She decided to skip makeup, further reducing the risk of being recognized. As she was leaving, Emma gave her a final look. "If anything happens, call me. Even if you own the hotel, you'll need to act like a guest inside. Observe everyone carefully." Pausing at the door, Rebecca said, "Don't worry, Emma. If needed, I'll reveal my identity. But first, I need to see their true faces." As the door closed behind her, Rebecca felt a mix of anger and determination. This wasn't just a visit to her hotel. It was a test of everything she had believed in her entire life. As Rebecca stepped through the revolving doors of her hotel, her eyes met the sight of glistening chandeliers and polished marble floors. The lobby appeared as grand and flawless as she had envisioned in her dreams. But she wasn't here to admire the opulence. She was here to uncover the reality beneath it. Taking a deep breath, She walked towards the reception desk. Behind it stood a young man, focused intently on his computer screen. Rebecca waited a few seconds, hoping he would notice her, but the receptionist didn't even glance up. Rebecca cleared her throat politely. "Excuse me," she said in a calm tone. The receptionist finally raised his head, and Rebecca instantly felt uneasy. His eyes scanned her modest attire, and an eyebrow arched in subtle disdain. "Yes, how can I help you?" he asked, his tone lacking professionalism. "I'd like to book a room," Rebecca replied evenly. "Do you have any available right now?" The receptionist gave her a quick once-over, a faint smirk curling his lips. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of condescension, as if to imply she didn't belong in such a place. Rebecca took a deep breath. "No, I don't have a reservation, but if you have an available room, I'm ready to pay for it," she said calmly. The young man turned back to his computer and typed a few keys before looking at her again, this time with open contempt. "I'm sorry, but this is a luxury hotel. Maybe you'd be more comfortable finding something more suitable nearby. There are a few budget options in the area," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. For a moment, she was speechless. Here in her own hotel, her employee was dismissing her based solely on her appearance. The mix of shame and anger was overwhelming. Struggling to mask her disappointment, she asked, "Are you saying there are no rooms available? Or are you implying I'm not worthy of staying here?" The receptionist shrugged lightly. "Look," he said, his voice growing more patronizing, "this place caters to a certain standard. You'd be better off finding somewhere that meets your needs." Rebecca's fingers gripped the edge of the counter tightly as she felt her heart race. She had built this hotel to welcome people equally. Yet here she was, witnessing one of her employees blatantly violating those principles. She took a few deep breaths, trying to control the storm of emotions within her. Thoughts raced through her mind. He judged me solely on my appearance. He doesn't know my story, my struggles. Yet my skin color and clothing made me worthless in his eyes. After a brief silence, Rebecca spoke again, her voice steady but laden with emotion. "I'm willing to pay for the room. What exactly do I need to meet your standards? A different outfit? Or perhaps a different skin color?" she asked, her words cutting but composed. The receptionist seemed uncomfortable with her response but didn't adjust his attitude. "There's no need to take it that way," he said cautiously. "It's just that this hotel caters to a specific clientele." Rebecca offered a cold smile as she stared at him. "I see. And I'm not part of that clientele, am I?" Her voice had sharpened, and she no longer cared to hide her frustration. Feeling the futility of continuing the exchange, Rebecca took a deep breath and stepped back. As she walked away from the desk and through the lobby, a wave of humiliation and anger washed over her. One thought consumed her mind. This didn't just happen to me. How many others have been judged and excluded in the same way? Feeling like a stranger in her own hotel was Rebecca's worst nightmare. But now she understood she held the power to change it. Clutching her bag tightly, she decided to try the restaurant next. This was only the beginning. Rebecca took a deep breath as she stepped through the elegant glass doors of the restaurant. It was every bit as luxurious as it should have been. Fine linens, exquisite cutlery, and the faint aroma of fresh flowers. But most of the tables were empty. This was her creation, yet she was here to uncover the discrimination hiding beneath the polished surface. A young hostess standing at the entrance scanned Rebecca from head to toe. Her plain clothes and lack of makeup elicited a brief flicker of discomfort on the hostess's face. With a slight furrow of her brow, she asked coldly, "Do you have a reservation?" Rebecca offered a polite smile. "No, but I'm dining alone. I'd like a table for one," she replied. Without even glancing at the restaurant, the hostess responded with a blank expression. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked." Rebecca's eyes quickly scanned the room. Dozens of tables were empty, many freshly cleaned and ready for guests. Trying to remain composed, she said, "It looks like there are a few empty tables," gesturing toward them. The hostess's discomfort flashed briefly before morphing into a mocking smile. "Those tables are reserved," she said in a tone that suggested Rebecca should drop the matter. Rebecca inhaled deeply. "I see. I don't mind waiting. Could you let me know if a reservation gets canceled or if a table opens up?" she asked. The hostess rolled her eyes this time. This might not be the right place for you. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable at a nearby restaurant, she said, looking back at her tablet dismissively. Something inside Rebecca shattered. To be so openly dismissed at her own hotel was a wound deeper than she'd imagined. Yet she maintained her calm and replied, "Thank you. I'll wait." After about 20 minutes, Rebecca was finally seated. In that time, she watched multiple guests walk in without reservations and still be warmly welcomed and seated promptly. Holding back the growing anger in her chest, she waited for a server to approach her table. Eventually, Rebecca flagged down a waiter. "Excuse me, may I see the menu?" she asked. The waiter quickly placed a menu on her table without making eye contact and walked away. Rebecca calmly reviewed the options and placed her order when the waiter returned. "I'll have the grilled salmon with vegetables and a glass of water, please." The waiter responded with a curt "sure" and walked off. About 15 minutes later, a plate was placed in front of her, not with salmon, but with a dry, burnt piece of chicken. Rebecca looked up at the waiter, her voice gentle but firm. "I think there's been a mistake. I ordered salmon, but this is chicken." The waiter, showing no sign of apology, replied, "We're out of salmon." Rebecca blinked, taking another deep breath. "Why wasn't I informed? I could have ordered something else." The waiter shrugged. "Our menu is limited. This is what we have," he said before turning and walking away. Rebecca felt herself shrinking into her chair. Refusing to let the injustice break her resolve, she chose not to eat the dry chicken. She called another waiter. "Excuse me, there's an issue with this dish. May I place a new order?" The second waiter responded with a faint smirk. "Of course, but we don't have many options left. Perhaps something simple?" Rebecca, holding on to her patience, said, "A salad, please, and make sure it's fresh." The waiter nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. When the salad arrived a few minutes later, it was a pitiful mix of wilted lettuce and stale dressing. Rebecca's hand instinctively reached for the edge of the plate as her emotions bubbled to the surface. She picked up a piece of limp lettuce, staring at it while tears threatened to spill. This was no accident. This was a message. You don't belong here. Sitting silently, Rebecca stared at the untouched plate in front of her. Her eyes drifted to the other corners of the restaurant. She observed the other guests, cheerful, well-dressed, enjoying their meals without a care. The staff attended to them with bright smiles, fulfilling every request with enthusiasm. A lump formed in Rebecca's throat as her thoughts overwhelmed her. Who am I? After all these years of dreaming about this hotel, did I unknowingly sow the seeds of this discrimination? Is it really so easy to make someone feel worthless based on their appearance and skin color? She took a deep breath, pushing back the tears, and made herself a promise. This won't end here. This is just the beginning. Before I show them who I am, I need to see their true faces. Rebecca rose from her chair, leaving the untouched plate behind. She walked out of the restaurant with a heavy heart, but a fierce determination. This was her test, and she was ready to face it. As Rebecca left the restaurant, she decided to spend some time in the lobby. Every experience she had endured since entering the hotel filled her with immense anger and disappointment. Yet she reminded herself to stay calm. This is my hotel. I will remind these people of my values, she thought. She sat in one of the large leather chairs and began observing the surroundings. The staff buzzed around well-dressed guests, eagerly attending to their every need with warm smiles. But the glances directed at Rebecca were laced with suspicion and disdain. After a while, she noticed two security guards approaching her from the other side of the lobby. One of them, a burly, fair-skinned man, stopped in front of her and furrowed his brows. His authoritative voice echoed, "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" Rebecca calmly stood up. "I'm just sitting here," she replied. "Is that a problem?" The younger security guard, who had a smug, mocking expression, chimed in. "Are you a guest of this hotel?" he asked in a tone dripping with sarcasm. Rebecca took a deep breath. "Stay calm," she thought. With a slight smile, she said, "Yes, I am. In fact, I'm the owner of this hotel." She was curious to see how they would react. The younger guard burst out laughing. "What did you just say? The owner? Come on, a black woman as the boss? Give me a break," he said, turning to his colleague with an exaggerated wink. Rebecca froze. It was one of the most blatant and cruel acts of discrimination she had ever encountered. "Yes, I am the owner of this hotel," she said firmly, "and the way you're speaking to me is completely unacceptable." The burly guard rolled his eyes. "Come on, stop with the nonsense. This is a first-class hotel. You can't be the owner. You're probably just following someone here or looking to cause trouble." Rebecca took another deep breath and raised her voice slightly. "I am Rebecca Taylor, the owner of Crescent Bay Hotel. Now you can either listen to me or learn that the person you're throwing out is the one who pays your salaries." The younger guard, still laughing, said, "Seriously? A black woman owning this place? That's ridiculous. Our bosses are always white. There's no way a black woman would own a hotel this fancy." Rebecca's face burned with rage. Her heart was pounding, but she tried to maintain her composure. "I'm not going to argue with you any further. If you have an issue, call your manager. I'll speak with them," she said, her voice trembling with restrained fury. But the burly guard ignored her and said, "I think that's enough. Ma'am, you need to leave the premises. Otherwise, we'll have to escort you out." Rebecca's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're throwing me out? Out of my own hotel?" she asked, her voice rising. "Yes, we're removing you," the younger guard said. "And if you resist, we'll call the police." The guards grabbed Rebecca by the arms and began dragging her toward the exit. Rebecca struggled, humiliated and furious, but also tried to stay composed. Other guests in the lobby watched the scene unfold. Some whispered among themselves, while others seemed indifferent. By the time they reached the front door, Rebecca's face was flushed with anger. "You will both pay for this," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and determination. "When you realize the truth, you'll understand just how big of a mistake you've made." The younger guard threw her one last mocking glance. "Yeah, sure. Go tell someone else your story," he said, slamming the door behind her with a laugh. Rebecca stood outside the hotel, taking deep breaths to steady herself. Her heart was a whirlwind of anger, shame, and resolve. Tears threatened to fall, but she refused to cry. "This isn't just about me. For everyone who has faced this kind of discrimination, I will be their voice. I'll do whatever it takes to restore this hotel to its true values," she thought. Adjusting her bag, Rebecca walked away. The battle had only just begun. After leaving the lobby, Rebecca retreated to a quieter corner of the hotel. Her emotions were in turmoil, but her mind remained steady and determined. The behavior of the security guards, the staff's attitude, she knew these weren't isolated incidents. This isn't just discrimination against the guests. It's a rot that has seeped into every corner of this hotel, she thought. She decided to speak with some of the employees. By keeping her identity concealed, she hoped to uncover the truth about the hotel's culture. Her eyes fell on a young woman walking briskly down the corridor. The woman looked tired, but her expression carried a hint of frustration. Rebecca approached her and asked gently, "Excuse me, could I have a quick word with you? I'd like to understand a few things." The woman, who was clearly of Latin descent, looked up at Rebecca. Though exhausted, she gave a small, genuine smile. "Sure, but I hope Anderson doesn't catch us talking. He'll give us hell," she said, her voice tinged with worry. The mention of Anderson immediately piqued Rebecca's interest. "Anderson? What could he possibly do to you?" she asked. The woman sighed deeply, glancing around nervously. "I don't know you, but you seem trustworthy," she said, lowering her voice. "Working here is a nightmare. Anderson constantly pressures us, especially those of us who are Latin or black." Rebecca listened intently. "What kind of pressure does he put on you?" she asked, her voice firm. The woman, whose name she later learned was Maria, looked down as she spoke in a hushed tone. "Last week I took a short break, just a few minutes, and he yelled at me. He said, 'You're working in a luxury hotel, not loitering on a street corner. If you can't keep up with our standards, get out.' Other staff heard it, but no one dared to speak up." Rebecca felt a wave of nausea. "Does this happen often?" she asked. Maria gave a bitter smile. "It's not just me. There's my friend James. He's black, and Anderson treats him even worse. He constantly mocks him and makes the rest of the staff ostracize him." Rebecca, deeply affected by Maria's words, decided she needed to talk to James. Maria directed her to the employee lounge, where Rebecca found James sitting alone, his face etched with sadness. "Hi, James," Rebecca said softly. Can I talk to you for a moment? James looked up, cautious at first, but relaxed when he saw Rebecca's kind demeanor. Sure, he said. Rebecca sat down and told James she wanted to hear his story. James hesitated for a few seconds, then took a deep breath. Working here, it's hard, he began. I'm constantly targeted. Anderson treats me differently because of my skin color. Just the other day, I was a bit late helping a customer, and he told me, this place isn't for people like you. Do your job or leave. Rebecca felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. How do you deal with that? She asked. James shrugged. It's not easy to find another job, but working here feels like being reminded every day that you're worthless. The other staff follow Anderson's lead. Once they even threw my lunch in the trash, just to say, there's no place for you here. Rebecca was devastated by what she had learned from Maria and James. This isn't just a matter of discrimination. These people are being dehumanized. How could I, as the owner, not see this happening, she thought. She turned to Mariah and James, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. Thank you for sharing this with me. I promise you, I will help you. You may not have to endure this much longer, she said, fighting back tears. Maria looked at her, confused. Who are you? She asked. Rebecca wasn't ready to reveal her identity. Not yet. Just a friend, she replied. But I promise you, things are going to change. The next morning, Rebecca stepped onto the executive floor of her hotel with a fiery determination coursing through her veins. The stories Maria and James had shared were the final straw. Today, she was going to confront Anderson and dismantle the toxic culture that had infected her dream. She knocked on Anderson's office door, and his self-assured voice called out, "Come in!" Rebecca took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. Anderson sat behind a large desk, a file in his hand and his face adorned with a smug grin. "Rebecca Taylor," he said, his tone dripping with mock cordiality. "What a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting you." Rebecca fixed him with a cold stare. "You should have," she replied. "I've seen what's happening in this hotel. I've witnessed how the employees and guests are treated." Anderson leaned back in his chair, chuckling. "Ah, yes, back to the usual talk of equality and fairness, we're right. Rebecca, this is a luxury hotel. You and I both know not everyone belongs here." Rebecca stepped closer, her expression hardening. "Belongs? What exactly do you mean by that, Anderson? Skin color? Clothing? What is it that determines who belongs?" Anderson remained calm, his tone unapologetic. "Yes, actually, this is a prestigious establishment. We cater to the right clientele and hire the right staff. If someone doesn't meet those standards, that's not our problem. Surely you understand that." Rebecca's face flushed with anger. Standards? Or just an excuse for racist and elitist behavior? I know what you've said to Maria and James. I know how you treat your employees. And I've seen the discrimination against our guests. Anderson laughed dismissively. Maria? James? Oh, please, Rebecca. They're troublemakers. Nothing more. People like them don't succeed. It's harsh, but it's reality. Rebecca's heartbeat quickened. People like them? What exactly do you mean? Anderson's smirk widened. Oh, come on, Rebecca. Don't you see it? It's laughable when black people dream big. You're one of them. But you got lucky. You made it this far. But for the other blacks or Latinos here, they have no future in a place like this. That's just a fact. At that moment, the office door opened. Maria and James entered, followed by a small group of other employees. Rebecca watched, surprised but proud, as they stood united behind her. Maria stepped forward and said, "We're with Rebecca. We've had enough. We won't support a boss like you any longer." Anderson stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "Who do you think you are to challenge me? You're nothing but low-level workers. You're proving you don't belong here." James met Anderson's glare with unwavering resolve. "We're not the ones who don't belong, Anderson. You're the problem. You're the one poisoning this hotel." One of Anderson's loyal staff standing behind him scoffed. "Rebecca? A black woman as a leader? Come on, Anderson's the one who brought this hotel to where it is. He's the real reason we're here." Rebecca ignored the comment and addressed the group in the room. If anyone here stands with me against this toxic culture, now is the time to say so. We're going to turn this hotel into the place I always dreamed it would be, a place where everyone is valued equally. Anderson sneered. And who are you to lead this? You're just a black woman. Being in charge is nothing but a stroke of luck for you. Real leaders are people like me. Rebecca inhaled deeply, her gaze locking onto Anderson's. I'm Rebecca Taylor. I own this hotel, and as of now, you have no control here. Maybe only a handful of people saw the way you treated me and others, but you'll never win against me. The employees standing with Maria and James turned their backs on Anderson, their silent solidarity speaking louder than words. A few of his supporters quietly left the room. Rebecca, unshaken, said firmly, "This isn't over, Anderson. I will remove you from this hotel, and I will rebuild it into a place where everyone is treated with dignity." Anderson's defiant smirk faltered as Rebecca turned to leave the office. The tide had shifted, and Rebecca knew this was just the beginning of her fight. That evening, Rebecca sat alone in her hotel suite, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The confrontation with Anderson, Maria and James's stories, and the systemic injustices she had witnessed weighed heavily on her shoulders. Yet she refused to crumble under the weight. Changing this hotel and the lives of everyone here is my responsibility, she thought resolutely. She pulled out her phone and replayed the audio recordings she had collected over the past few weeks. Anderson's threats in his office, the cruel remarks to employees, and the blatant discrimination endured by Maria and James, all of it was evidence. Rebecca knew she had to act not just for herself, but for everyone in her hotel. The next morning, Rebecca convened a meeting in the hotel's grand conference room. Gathered were members of the management team, employees, and a few key stakeholders. Rebecca, composed and purposeful, stood at the head of the table. "We're here today," she began, "to redefine the identity, values, and future of this hotel." Her gaze landed briefly on Anderson, who sat with a smug expression, arms crossed as if daring her to challenge him. Rebecca placed a tablet on the table and pressed play on an audio file. The room filled with Anderson's harsh, disdainful voice. "No one here works for Black or Latino people. They're just here to be taught how to work like slaves. The standards of this hotel are for whites. The rest are just burdens." The room fell into stunned silence. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, and Anderson's smirk froze. Rebecca played another recording, this time capturing Anderson berating Maria and James. "People like you will never achieve anything. If you can't work, you're out." When the second recording ended, the room was silent except for the sound of Rebecca setting the tablet down. She leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "Everyone in this room now understands the toxic culture that has plagued this hotel for years. This culture wasn't born overnight. It was allowed to grow. But starting today, that ends. I am taking legal action against Anderson and everyone who shares his mentality." Anderson shot up from his seat. This is a setup. I won't stand for this," he shouted, his voice filled with panic. "You can't judge me." Rebecca held his gaze unflinching. "You've already judged yourself, Anderson. These recordings are proof of your actions. I am firing you, effective immediately. You will also face legal consequences for your behavior. From this moment on, you are no longer a part of this hotel." Anderson stormed out of the room, his face red with fury. As the door slammed shut behind him, murmurs of relief and approval rippled through the room. Rebecca turned back to the group. "This is just the beginning," she continued. "Anderson's actions were severe, but they thrived in a culture of silence. That silence ends today." Rebecca outlined her plans for change. First, she announced promotions for Maria and James, who had endured so much. "Maria," she said with a warm smile, "you will now be our guest relations manager. James, you'll lead employee training and development. Your voices will reflect the true values of this hotel." Maria and James exchanged astonished glances, their eyes brimming with emotion. Maria spoke first, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Rebecca. I'll never forget this chance." Rebecca nodded and addressed the rest of the staff. "Additionally, I will personally oversee the hotel's daily operations for the time being. Every corner of this hotel will be reviewed, and no trace of discrimination will remain." The room erupted into applause. Rebecca felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Before concluding the meeting, she delivered one final message. This hotel was built to provide luxury, but it will now also stand for justice and equality. From today forward, Crescent Bay Hotel will not just be a symbol of prestige, it will be a beacon of fairness. After the meeting, Rebecca walked through the lobby alone. She noticed the security staff and employees glancing at her, their faces filled with respect. Every step felt like a move closer to fulfilling her vision. As she exited the hotel, she caught her reflection in the large glass doors. The determination in her eyes and the pride on her face reminded her of her strength. Crescent Bay Hotel was no longer just her creation. It was now a platform for justice and change.